Hello, degenerate heathens, and welcome to, well, I think actually now I'm moving it from Fundie Sunday to Fundie Mundie because I'm just works out better that way for my schedule. So I guess this is technically the second, maybe even third Fundie Mundie because I have put it off before, but this is the first official one, and it'll be on Mondays from now on. So today we're going to be looking at some more presuppositional BS, and we'll just jump right in.
So for example, like animal rights activists will say it should be a crime to destroy certain eggs of certain creatures. That should be a crime. But those same people will be for the destruction of, say, a human being growing in the fetus.
Okay, but have you asked people are you assuming that people have certain opinions on animal rights who are in this march?
No. It's obviously it's not monolithic. It's a mixed bag. So that's why the variety of interviews to see the wide spectrum of beliefs.
Yeah. Again, I'm just interested to see how it's framed and if it's presented accurately.
Well, I'll tell you this: we're Christians, and we have an obligation because of what we believe to have integrity and to tell the truth. So, say for example, if you had atheists in here marching today, they don't have a workable worldview to make sense of integrity. So the person you should be worried about is the.
Okay. Hold on. He's saying we should be worried about the atheist?
Atheist who has a worldview that says that there are no absolutes.
Absolutely wrong. You are absolutely wrong. First of all, atheism is not a worldview. It is the lack of a theist worldview, or the rejection of a theist worldview, whatever. We're not going to go into that argument, but it is anti your worldview. Whatever strength of anti you want to take, atheism is not itself a worldview. It's not a belief system. It's just you saying there's a God and us saying either no there's not or I don't believe you. Anyway, let's talk about integrity. He said he accused atheism of not being able to account for integrity. So atheism is not a thing at all. It's a lack of a thing. But I take his point. So atheists are quite easily able to account for integrity. And in fact, it is especially this kind of Christian who tries to own integrity, tries to claim exclusive ownership of integrity, that totally lack integrity. Because guess what? You're just blindly following orders. Literally. You don't question them. That is not integrity. You just do as you think your God is telling you, and what really just some preachers are telling you. That's not integrity. You don't even know why you're following orders. You don't know who's issuing these orders. You think they're coming from an all-knowing, unquestionable super being, but you can't verify it. You presuppose, which is to say you assume it. Integrity is the quality of being honest and holding strong moral principles, which is impossible for you to do. You have the weakest moral principles of all, which basically your moral principles is do as you're told to avoid punishment. You don't care what's really right, and I'll demonstrate that. You absolutely don't care. You just want a proxy to tell you what to do. You don't care what it actually is. You don't care why it's right. You just want to be told what to do. So, again, atheists don't share any particular worldview, so you can't speak to their moral principles or integrity at all. But I would hazard to guess the majority of atheists at least try to do good for the sake of doing good, and not for the sake of the approval of Sky Daddy or to avoid punishment from Sky Daddy. We also tend to question our moral principles and try to come up with actual reasoning and justifications for them. You just say, Sky Daddy said so, so it must be true, which is flawed on every conceivable level. As for myself, I've developed a rigorous, objective morality system. And all you have is a subjective moral system that deliberately does not seek any reasoning behind your God's will. You just accept it on blind faith. Literally. You just presuppose that it's good. That is not integrity. That is the opposite of integrity. That is not honest. It's not holding strong moral principles. It is the coward and the weakling's way out. The way to avoid questioning your moral principles that you don't actually have. You don't have moral principles. The only thing that approaches a moral principle is blindly obey God. You don't actually... If you had principles, you wouldn't need God, because you would understand why God has a certain morality. You would understand what God's principles are, and you would understand that any rational being should be able to come to these principles the same as God did. But you don't have any moral principles. You just have blind obedience, which is not a strong moral principle. In fact, it is possibly the worst moral principle there is.
From a Christian perspective, there's an absolute standard that I must maintain integrity and always tell the truth, and to not.
And that doesn't really hold any Christian to that, unless you're saying Christians always tell the truth. And I don't think you have a moral obligation to always tell the truth. If someone says, I'm going to shoot you in the head right now if you're a Christian, I don't think you have an obligation to say, oh yeah, I'm a Christian. And yeah, I know you might have the desire to go down as a martyr, but it's not going to accomplish anything. So, yeah, all you would accomplish is, I don't know, maybe your family losing a family member for absolutely no reason because you wanted to tell the truth to a violent maniac. Okay. It's a much different situation than like dying for your beliefs. Like they're coming to, like the government is coming to execute all Christians, and you're just going to stand up for what you believe in. That's a different condition, situation. There are certainly situations that it's okay to lie to people, especially like maniacs and murderers.
Tell the truth is a sin.
Okay, but people can't have their own moral compass without a divine reason?
Well, I would say that you can't have a meaningful justification for a moral...
God is not a meaningful justification, because guess what? In a perfect world where there's a perfect God, God is going to have justifications for his morality that aren't, I said so. I like this action and I don't like that action because I just randomly came to that conclusion for absolutely no reason. So either your God has a random moral standard, making it an arbitrary and subjective moral standard that you're talking about, or God has reasoning and justification to his moral standard, in which case I can come up with those same reasons without having to trust a person who's pretending to speak for a God.
Moral complaint if you don't have God as the absolute standard. So for
again, that makes absolutely no sense. What you're appealing to is absolute authority. Might makes right. So, no. The absolute moral standard is what is correct. And a perfect God would hold what is correct to be moral, and what is incorrect to be immoral. And he could not arbitrate that. He could not change that no matter how much he wanted to, the same way as he can't make a round square. It's just a logical fact. It is the fact of the way God has to be, because otherwise he is lying, which you said a Christian can't do, and obviously your God couldn't do that because it's a sin. in a perfect world. And the other way I can absolutely, with an absolute statement, prove that you are absolutely wrong is that God cannot be arbitrary. God cannot be the standard. Otherwise, he could just say, murdering babies for fun is moral. And because God is your standard, that must mean that murdering babies is, for fun, is morally good. Now, if an absolute creator God with absolute power, who created everything and for all intents and purposes is your God, except he's evil and wants us to murder babies for fun, we could very well figure out that that is an evil God. So it doesn't, because a proposition like that would have inherent contradictions in it. So it doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter how much authority this God has. It's still wrong. And I can prove it because you would say, well, my God would never say that it's okay to murder babies for fun. And there you've admitted my entire premise. Because you're admitting in there that a perfect God has some kind of constraint that would not allow him to accept the premise that murdering babies for fun is a good thing. He is constrained by some form of logic or reasoning, rationality, and justification that is causing him to hold moral principles against murdering babies for fun. And therefore, that proves everything I've said correctly.
For example, if you were to take the atheist framework, right, and say the view of origins.
There is no atheist framework. Period. End of story. Atheism is not a belief system, but atheists can hold belief systems. There are atheistic belief systems that are belief systems that have no contingency on God, but there is no one atheist belief system. There are no required beliefs in atheism other than rejecting any belief contingent on God.
Is there an atheist framework, or is atheism literally just the meaning, not believing in God?
Well, you could say that the statement, the claim, there is no God, but it's not.
But is it a statement of all people who may consider themselves atheists, or maybe best described as atheists because of their belief or lack thereof? Is there something to say that they all share something?
Sure.
And not all Christians are creationists, like I think this guy seems to be. The issue of origins. There are plenty of Christians who believe that God just set up a clockwork universe where the Big Bang happened according to God's will, according to God's plan, and evolution happened according to God's plan.
A denial of God's existence and the belief that, say, it's not to say that atheism is monolithic. You have atheists who are dualists, atheists who are naturalistic materialists. They believe that all there is matter and motion, that all there is a natural, nothing supernatural, but they have the same fundamental...
No, they don't. And there are atheists who believe in the supernatural, just maybe not your God or like any specific gods, but they might believe in some supernatural energies. They just wouldn't call them gods.
Claim about the universe is there's no God, no governance, no guidance, no personal God, no personal...
No governance and no guidance. Bullshit.
Order.
Okay, have you met...
No order? No atheist claims that there is no order. You need order for your cells to work. You need order for water to not spill out of a glass. And you need order for a God to make any sense, which would mean that he's bound by order and he can't exist without disorder. If you had a God that could break the laws of logic, that would mean he could be God and not be God at the same time. Is that the God that you believe in? No. Well, then you believe in the God that proves all of my moral theory correct, which would be a God that is bound and limited and subservient and contingent upon the absolute highest laws of logic. So, but you don't believe in that God, so you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, which is why all of your arguments are absurd.
Someone who would describe themselves as an atheist who just doesn't care what's out there and doesn't deny the existence of God, but just doesn't really care.
That'd be an agnostic.
Why?
Well, an agnostic would say, you can't,
not sure.
you can't know. I don't really care. You know,
atheist just means like not religious. No.
No, the classical. I mean, A is a negation of theist. So
this is such a boring argument to even have. Like, what is even the point? All atheism is, no matter how strongly you put it, is a response to the claim that there is a God. Now, you can tell me you own a Ferrari, and I can go, no, you don't. Or I can go, prove it, I don't believe you. That's not a position on its own. I don't walk around saying, this guy doesn't have a Ferrari. This guy doesn't have a Ferrari. I don't believe this guy has a Ferrari. I simply lack the belief this guy has a Ferrari. This is not a thing that anyone thinks about until you claim that you have a Ferrari. And then we have a response to it. That is all atheism ever is, no matter what. No one thinks about God until you bring it up. Even theists have to be taught about God, which is one proof that God doesn't exist, at least many forms of God. Because the fact that a human has to tell you is just more proof of how weak and cowardly your God is.
Theism, agnostic means without knowledge, without God. So the classic definition of an atheist is there is no God. That's what the word means. And so with that,
that's what it's become to me.
Well, that's the
which only exists in response to you bringing it up in the first place. So, if I'm strongly saying, nah, you're full of shit, your claim is false. In fact, the opposite is true. I wouldn't be making that until you bring it up in the first place. So, it doesn't matter. This is irrelevant. This is stupid. We have to stop indulging this, and we have to start. The best way to deal with presuppositionalists is to stop them in their tracks and say, you need to prove there's a God. You can't prove things by saying this is the impossibility of the alternative makes my claim true. So it can get difficult because a lot of them, like Jay Robin and Darth Dawkins, will just leave. They're cowards. They're intellectual featherweights. So if you don't play their game, they'll just leave. Like Darth Dawkins, even if he agrees to a formal debate in front of thousands of people live, he'll just leave if I don't obey the logic tree or the dialogue tree that he has pre-planned. So this is, I mean, it's pathetic, but if you get someone who's a little more open, or if you get someone calling in, you can basically tell him no. If you have the power, you're able to stop them and say, no, you need to prove God. I'm not going to prove that there is no God. It's irrational to believe your God exists just because I can't prove it doesn't exist. Just always have that in the forefront when talking to these people. But of course, they'll try and avoid that like the plague. That's why presuppositionalism exists, is to avoid having to prove that there is a God, because they know there is none. The fact that presuppositional exists is an admission of defeat, that they have no evidence for God. So I am actually quite thankful for it, because it's an admission of defeat, and I love rubbing it in their faces.
Classic definition.
People who choose to ascribe to, well, there may be people who choose to use that word who are very adamant that they're, in the same way that there are some people who would deem themselves religious, especially in...
And also, if you ever get into these arguments and it starts veering off into what is the definition of atheism, just say, look, this is how I'm using the word in this case. I'm not going to have this argument. This is what I believe. If you're a lack theist, just explain this is how I'm using the word, or this is my beliefs. I'm not going to have an argument about what the historical definition of atheism is, because one, that's an etymological fallacy, and two, it's just a waste of time. What's really important here is the asymmetry between atheism and theism. Atheism is not just an equal and opposite claim. It's not just a claim, oh, there's a white marble or there's a black marble. No. No one cares about theism until you bring it up. Theism is the claim. Atheism is the response to the claim. It is inherently a response, no matter how strong the response is. It can never exist as a claim on its own. Theism has to make the claim first. That is the asymmetry. That is what's important.
Place like Ireland, there would be people that I know who may say, well, maybe I'll get married in a church just for shits and giggles kind of thing. But actually, if you sat down with them, they probably don't believe.
It would just be cultural.
Anything.
Right.
It's cultural, yeah, exactly. And I think but then you have people who feel very strongly about their beliefs. And I think there would be people who feel very strongly about their lack of belief. But I suppose a belief that there is no God is a belief.
Sure it is. And at the same time...
But then I think there are people who just don't give a shit.
Well, sure, yeah. There's more indifferent atheists, and then there are militant atheists, right? The spectrum gets pretty broad. But what I would say is there's a shared belief among atheists in terms of origins. So atheism is a denial of God's existence.
No, there's not. In general, sure. But in principle, in definition, no, there's not.
But atheism has a particular metaphysic, a particular ethic, a view of how they know things. Now, it may not be the same across the board.
No, there isn't. There is a correct version that is not theist, because you can't know anything by starting with God. There's just the way that we know things, and it starts with observation. I'm sure we'll get more into that, so I'll hold off the full explanation for now.
But say, for example, if I walked up to the typical kind of secular educated person today who denies God's existence, and I'd say, how'd we get here? There'd be a consistent story.
What is it with these people and calling everything secular? Secular is the whole point of secularism is to allow your stupid religion to coexist with the other stupid religions. You guys were all trying to kill each other before secularism came around. Secularism does not mean atheism. Secularism does not mean anti-theism. It means that the government's not going to enforce religion. So anyone who's complaining about secularism is a theocrat, or they want theocracy. I'm not sure what the term for someone who supports theocracy is, because a theocrat would be the actual person in charge of the theocracy, I think. Anyway, if you hear someone complaining about secularism, that means that they want the government to enforce their religion. So that's a massive red flag.
Story. Well, we got here through random mutations over evolutionary time.
Which is a belief held by most Christians, by the way. And most of the scientists are Christians in the US.
Don't think, in Ireland anyway, we're in Ireland at the moment, I would disagree with that. That doesn't mean that I'm right.
So you wouldn't say that atheists believe in evolution?
That's not what I said.
Most Christians believe in evolution, and so do most atheists, because that's the scientific conclusion. Why are they so obsessed with this?
So that you do agree, then they would.
But, well, I can't speak on behalf of someone else. You'd have to ask every single atheist in the world.
Sure, no, and you heard me say before that atheism isn't monolithic.
Yeah, exactly.
But they share particular beliefs about, because you can't just say there is no God and then nothing happens. There's no neutrality. Everybody has a particular view of, say...
Okay, use me as an example of neutrality. I just don't think it's relevant. I'm here now. I don't...
Yeah, people have all kinds of views on how we know things, how we got here. Most people don't spend any time thinking about that at all. Even people who have rejected your religious claims don't sit there and are like, how do I know that I'm even sitting in a house? How do I even know reality is real? Almost no one does that. This is just a cudgel that you've invented to confuse the shit out of people who don't think about this stuff.
See what is relevant as to what might happen.
Well, I'll show you I'll show you how it is relevant. Let's take two frameworks, say the Christian worldview and the atheistic perspective.
Okay.
Perspectives, okay? So say multiple.
I'm not going to
Bullshit.
identify with either of those.
That's fine. No, you don't have to. Just take it as an experiment, a thought experiment,
Yeah.
okay? So let's say someone says, well, I don't think it really matters. The question of God doesn't matter. Okay. A person who kidnaps and rapes and mutilates a child, is that...
Yeah, the question of God doesn't matter. Most people are not even thinking about God in relation to these things. They just have a belief that isn't necessarily tied to other beliefs. That's why it's not a belief system, because you have a belief system where all your beliefs have to be tied together. We, sane, rational people, tend to gather beliefs independently and see how they connect instead of trying to force them to connect.
Wrong?
Yes.
On what basis?
My gut.
What's that?
My gut. My own
Your gut?
feeling, yeah.
Well, the person who rapes the child, his pleasure was that he thought it was a good, moral, happy thing to do to the child. And you're...
Yeah, so, and your argument is, if your God has that gut pleasure, then it's moral. Which means you have an absolutely stunted moral system that has no ability to distinguish between an evil God, a lying God, a false God, a lying prophet, etc., 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 and a real God. Because whatever appears to be a God, it's just automatically correct for no other reason than it's God. You fail.
Your gut has no authority over him. This is a random universe where there is no God, no justice.
Yeah, but if that... But, okay.
God has no authority unless he can justify that authority with justifications, moral justifications, logical justifications. He can't just say, 'cause I said so. That is the lousiest of all lousy excuses.
Okay, so what's your point in that?
My point was, you said that you don't think it matters.
Yeah.
And I'm demonstrating to you that it does matter, because if we take the atheistic framework, it matters because atheism would ultimately say that we all came from highly evolved societies of bacteria. We're in a universe that doesn't care about us.
No, it doesn't. No multicellular organism ever came from bacteria. Ever, period.
There is no God above us, only sky above us. There's no meaning, no value, no purpose. I'll give you Dawkins, Richard Dawkins.
No. Atheism does not say there's no meaning, no value, no purpose. Christianity says there's no meaning, no value, no purpose. The only thing that matters is you worshiping and being enslaved by God and being what meaning is and purpose is that there? Nothing. Meaning and purpose are found in actual spirituality, where you understand the parts of the universe that are in you and the parts of you that are in the universe and how those connect, how it's just so complicated to explain just right here, but that is the basic thing, is you understand, wow, the things that make the universe work are kind of at work in my own self. Like there's a poetic symmetry there. That's finding meaning. Meaning is not found in God made us to worship him. Yeah. So as far as Christian spirituality, legitimate spirituality would go, I would say if you find like the love that you feel for each other and your loved ones, and you see that in the creation, the act of creation, right? That your God did. That kind of approaches spirituality. But his spirituality is dead because the buck always stops with, it's just God, which means nothing. Because if you extrapolate, okay, well, why is there meaning behind God? Then you get to these actual concrete examples, like I've just discussed earlier.
Dawkins, famous atheist, he says there is no good, no evil. There's only blind and pitiless indifference.
Okay.
Which means
there is blind and pitiless indifference, but I would also say he's wrong. There is good and evil. Dawkins is not a priest of atheism. He does not speak for atheists. He speaks for himself. And this is the fundamental dishonesty when you're talking to people like this.
means that the raped, mutilated child, what happened might have been painful, but it wasn't wrong from an atheistic framework.
Okay.
No, that's not an atheistic framework. That is Dawkins's framework.
But but I don't see what the difference would be just because, let's say, God existed and
Right.
the same thing happened to that child.
Right.
Yeah, God is indifferent to the child's suffering completely. And you leave no room to call out a God who enjoys the suffering of that child. If you found out that God enjoyed the suffering of that child, you would be forced to say that that's good. And the fact that you say that he never would is an admission that moral principles exist outside of God, because God's nature is dictated by these principles. Because if you're saying God can't be evil, that means that there's something God can't do, which means that he's bound by certain rules.
I have a meaningful...
How has that changed the actual situation? It hasn't.
Right, no, we're in a fallen world and evil things happen in a fallen, sinful world. But
That God designed with full foreknowledge of what would happen.
we're talking about the moral foundations of being able to complain about a child being raped. The atheist has no ultimate and meaningful...
But that's your opinion.
The atheist has an option. Not all atheists are committed to this option, and that is one of my goals in my crusade to bring to light this option that atheists have to grab a hold and say, there is an option for objective morality. Christians don't have it. Technically anyone can have it, because my moral framework is friendly to a God because I invented it with a God in mind. The God is central to the thought experiment, which is, if God was perfect and had perfect moral principles, those principles would exist as a product of logic and not of God. God is the product of logic. God is the one conforming to the truth of reality, not the other way around, because of what I've mentioned, because God cannot contradict himself, God cannot be evil, which I would define loosely as contradiction, at least can be detected by contradiction. So, yeah. Atheists have that option. Atheists don't necessarily take that option. A lot of them don't. A lot of them are moral realists, but I don't think they can't really describe it quite well enough. So that's my job. I'm working on some real rigorous outlines of that. I'm trying to get it perfect. For now, I think a kind of back and forth-ish type dialogue, even with a screen that can't talk back. I think that I can get my general points across. But in my magnum opus, so to speak, I'll be giving like very concrete examples of like what I think spirituality is. The strict syllogisms of what good and evil are, things like that.
Well, no, it's a philosophical refutation of atheism. It's not merely an opinion.
It's not a refutation of atheism because, one, you don't actually have any moral principles to refute atheism with, and you haven't actually succeeded in showing that atheists are not capable of finding this morality. You just sneak this premise in that God equals morality, and therefore anyone who doesn't believe in God can't have morality because by definition morality is tied to God. Well, you haven't shown that. So the fact that God is dependent on morality is actually the more important point.
Okay, but it's still an opinion. It may not be merely an opinion to you, but it still is an opinion.
Well, it's about what provides meaningful preconditions for moral indignation over atrocities like that. Now,
and I am God, listen to me, and blindly obey because I am God, and there's no other reason why I like daffodils, or I like love, or creation is good. There's no other reason other than I did it. Why isn't that good enough for you? I did it. It's good because it's me. How is that meaningful? How is that a good precondition for anything? That's meaningless.
atheism says all that was a bag of biological stuff that's ultimately it's protoplasm in a universe that doesn't care.
No, it doesn't. Atheism can say that that's a beautiful thing. Atheism can say that evolution is full of meaning. Evolution is full of spirituality. Now, it might be brutal and ugly at times, and I derive spiritual experience by understanding evolution. Existence itself is meaning and is what is good. Because let's ask ourselves, what is meant by good? Good is what something essentially is good for, which means what it does. So, what is good? Well, it has to exist. It has to be in order to have traits that it's good at doing or being. So, existence itself is a spiritual and moral good. And that's just derived from the common usage of the word good. So, then evil is just the opposite of that. So, it's really quite simple. And far deeper than any Christian concept I've heard so far.
The atheistic perspective. Now, from my perspective as a Christian, that was the image of God. There are absolute standards of...
Who cares? Why do we care about the image of God? What is good about the image of God? What if the image of God is sadistic? Again, if you say God can't be sadistic, then guess what? He's contingent upon what I'm saying good is. You could go further. You can go further and say, there is a Christian God. He is good, but he's good because existence itself is good, and he creates existence, and he makes things. He's a creator God, and he loves these things. which is an act of giving more existence, more freedom to the things that exist. And that is by definition good. And his morality comes from an understanding of this. But no, you just say, well, God said it, so I'm done thinking about it. How just disgustingly stunted. How sad that you can't go further. You can go further. My version of morality is friendly to any type of philosophy. What it's not friendly to is the type of God that for some reason, for some ego reason, cannot be contingent upon anything. Like truth. I'm not sure why it's offensive that an almighty God would be contingent upon truth. That to me seems like a good God. But no, it's because all their arguments rely on sneaking the premise in that God is necessarily existent or necessarily good, and nothing is contingent upon him because God is the exclusive owner of goodness and existence and contingency. Nothing can be higher than him. None of their arguments work if you just accept God is good because he's conforming to the good instead of vice versa.
Good. God is a holy God.
The child is still mutilated.
Sure.
I don't see what the difference
And the atheist doesn't get to complain about it
Why?
in a meaningful.
The atheist does get to complain about it when they define objective good, as I have. The Christian doesn't get to complain about it because it's God's will. And, the baby's going to heaven because for some reason they're exempt from not believing in Jesus. But the atheist who is in the same place as a baby, if you don't believe in something, it means you don't understand it. So, but the atheist will be punished, tortured forever because your God is a malicious tyrant, a hateful, unholy being. The Christian only has their subjective gut feeling. I don't like this, and I'm going to project that onto my God too. Even though if the God came down and said, no, I like baby suffering, you'd be forced to agree with him under your framework, which means that it's wholly evil and wrong, just incorrect. Because if your framework can get you to two different conclusions with the same method, that means it's broken. If a God came down and said, murdering babies, torturing babies is good, and a God came down and said, torturing babies is bad, you'd be forced to agree with both of them. My version is able to sort the difference between those gods based on one is making contradictions, one is not. So I'm able to distinguish between those gods because I have an objective standard. You have a subjective standard. So you're not able to distinguish. And therefore it is a failure. Just like the moral relativists, well, if some culture likes torturing babies, it's okay. And if some culture doesn't like torturing babies, that's also okay. If you arrive at the different conclusions with the same method, it is a useless method. It is just nothing. Moral relativism is just a nothing. It's not a moral stance. It's just saying morality doesn't even exist at all.
Way, because that's a bag of biological stuff.
Maybe an atheist wouldn't complain to you because you.
A bag of biological stuff can still have meaning and purpose and value because of what it does. What is the difference between a bag of biological stuff that can love and create and invent and share experiences and learn and teach and explore and whatever else I forgot on that list of wonderful things humans can do? What is the difference between a bag of biological stuff doing that and a cloud of spiritual dust that's possessing a bag of biological stuff, doing those same things. Like, what is the problem with the fact that chemicals might be able to do amazing things? What is so offensive to you about chemicals? Like, it just happens to be the way in which information is stored. It's just a physical medium, and so that's meaningless? I don't understand.
You wouldn't listen to it, but...
Oh, I'd listen to them, and here's why I think they would complain. The atheist would complain because he's in the image of God.
If that's the case, why do some people have different moral intuitions? Pro-choicers don't complain about abortion like they would rape.
And it's inescapable living in God's world. He knows the truth, but he denies it with his profession of atheism.
Okay, but again, that's...
No, he doesn't know the truth. Why would he deny what he knows to be true? Look at that smug face. No, this is absolutely incorrect. The atheist could simply see, oh, well, I don't want to be tortured. So what kind of moral rule is it where torture would be allowed if certain people get to get tortured and certain other people don't get to get tortured? Torture's okay for some people, but not other people. That's a subjective standard, so again, meaningless. If you're going around saying, well, I can torture people, but other people can't torture people, subjective standard, meaningless. So you need to have an objective standard that's the same for everyone, and then it's true. And an atheist can come up with that same thing. Oh, no one gets the power to torture each other. That's what's wrong with that? And an atheist also can say, well, we can define what good is. Good is rooted in existence itself. Torture reduces freedom, which is basically potential existence. So, by definition, that is less good and therefore more bad. And a Christian can just say, well, I think my Bible says that that's wrong, even though it doesn't. Your Bible has plenty of infant murdering sanctioned directly by God.
That's an opinion.
Well, you keep saying that, but it's a refutation.
Yeah. But it still doesn't change the practicalities of what has happened. And that's,
Well, we weren't talking about the consequences. We're talking about the foundation.
No, but the point is it doesn't change the practicalities of a situation. So that's why I'm saying I don't think that it matters what happens next.
Sure does.
Because that doesn't change what is happening now.
Oh, it sure does, because watch. In a Christian...
That's your
Because watch, you could not be more wrong and more arrogant.
belief. So I can't, I'm not trying to convince you otherwise, but I also can't convince you otherwise because that's what you believe.
Well, no, here's the thing. I think that if we love truth, we should change our opinions. If we love the truth...
You don't love truth. You love God and whatever God says. And if God says it's true, or if God says something and it contradicts with the truth, you have to love the lie. There is truth, just not truth dictated by a God.
Truth. We should always want to believe the truth. I believe that because I'm a Christian. Jesus...
I believe a perfect God would believe the truth, which means he is not the arbiter of morality. The truth is.
said he's the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by him.
See, to clarify, God, they will try and claim God is truth. Except God is more than truth. God is more than just these logical truths. Because God is a mind. The mind of God is being shaped by these logical truths that the mind of God cannot violate if he's a perfect God. And his nature, why is God's nature the way it is? Either it's just random and therefore meaningless, or it is determined by truth. Which one is it? You have to pick one.
follow the one who's the very embodiment of truth, we ought to care about truth as Christians. That's a Christian perspective. And it matters.
No, it's not. Your perspective is whatever God says. Has nothing to do with truth. You're not going to be able to analyze truth because, again, you're not able to analyze, you're not able to distinguish the declarations of an evil God or a lying God from a true God. Right? Truth is not part of this. You don't get to claim sole ownership of truth because you have the least access to it. Not Christianity as a whole, but this approach.
Matters because let's say you had two governments. One government that actually believes atheism and runs with it, and one that's Christian. The atheistic government...
What? Is he now conflating secularism with atheism?
If they lived on its principles, would say there are no moral absolutes, there's no punishment, no justice.
Wrong. There's no principle in atheism that says you have to be a moral relativist. Now, I'm on a crusade against the atheists who are moral relativists, but that's because they're just as stunted as all the Christians who are majority moral relativists or moral subjectivists, because morality based on God is moral subjectivism by definition.
Yeah, and
there's no ultimate meaning.
But then you would be...
There's more ultimate meaning from atheism than there is in Christianity if the only meaning is to serve God. Okay, why is serving God good? What meaning is in serving God? With my approach, which is philosophy neutral, there is meaning in serving God if God is good because you are serving the good, and that meaning is increasing existence, increasing the things that the universe can do, which is basically the same as meaning. Whereas his approach contains no meaning. It's literally meaningless. It's just a circularity of God goes to God, goes to God.
Using atheism like a belief system.
Sure, because it is.
Any belief system.
It's not even remotely a belief system. This is disgusting.
Any absolute belief system is something personally that I cannot ascribe to.
He thinks he can derive a belief system from the rejection of his belief system. That these beliefs must be true if you reject my beliefs because I claim absolute ownership over truth. And like love and forgiveness and kindness typically are thrown in there with truth. But he's done no work to show that he has any access to truth. He has done no work to show that he has any access to meaning. This is a foregone conclusion.
Because
do you believe that? What you just said, you believe it?
Well, now you've asked me that, which makes me feel like I haven't articulated myself accurately.
It means it's a self-refutation.
Okay, tell me what I've...
You made a claim, and you talked about a belief system, and you talked about not wanting to have an ultimate belief system, but I asked you if you believe that.
Yeah.
And you ultimately would say yes, which means that the two statements, they wipe each other out.
Tell me that again?
Okay. You were making
He's absolutely grasping at straws at this point.
Statement about belief systems, like condemning the idea that someone has an actual belief system and holds to it.
Condemning the idea that someone has...
You can have beliefs without them being part of a belief system. The fact that there is a cactus on my windowsill is not a part of a belief system, unless you consider the fact that it's part of the system of beliefs that I can perceive anything at all, which is completely different thing altogether, which I'm surprised he hasn't brought up. How do you know anything at all without God? This isn't really, this is like weak sauce presuppositionalism. He's not even good at presup, which is famously bad.
Belief system, I'm saying that's not my personal choice or my personal way.
I guess I'm not following you.
I'm just not, I think that in general it is...
he's not able to follow her. He has brain damage. Literally, he has a wounded psyche. He has a block. Because anything that questions whether God is the end-all be-all and answer to everything is automatically not going to make sense to him. Because his belief system cannot accept that.
Personally speaking, I don't think that much good can come from everyone following one thing.
How about this?
But that's people with their own individual beliefs.
So it's no good can come from following this one thing?
There are going to be so many people who are in that.
I think he's probably pointing to some abortion protests or something. But the thought that popped into my head was, how about this pointing at traffic? Okay? Everyone has agreed to these shared understanding of the rules of how traffic works. Now, obviously that's not an objectively true system, but it is a working system. But he asked, no good thing can come from following this, so good can come out of people having a shared understanding and a shared system to follow, like traffic. The good that comes out of that is order, and people get where they need to go without crashing into each other. Language, for example, there's no objective truth to language. There's no objective truth to me calling a tree, but what objective good can come from us understanding that the syllables tree means that thing growing out of the ground. We can now do more things in the universe. We can communicate. We can, whatever. Talk about cutting the tree down, building a house. We have more opportunities. We have more freedom because of this shared understanding. I don't know. That's just what came to my head when he pointed behind him. That's just another example of what good actually means. And he doesn't have access to this because, again, he's just stuck on God is good. We don't know why God is good. We don't know why anything God does is good. We don't know why God considers himself good. It just kind of is out of the ether for no reason. Literally for no reason. He doesn't give a reason.
There are other things that I disagree with.
No, I know.
He says he won't even acknowledge that there is reasoning behind what God does. Otherwise, God is contingent upon the truths of this reasoning.
But you said that there's no good from following any one thing.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't articulate myself properly then. One belief system, and using that belief system to govern all the other choices and beliefs that you have in life.
But you realize, and I mean this with a lot of respect.
Yeah, I mean she's right in a sense that locks you in. It stunts you and keeps you tunnel visioned. So you should always be trying to collate from different points of view. It is true that there is an absolute truth that you could probably like one system of belief that you could filter your beliefs through, and it could be true. But I think her point is, what I just explained. You got to try and have different perspectives. He's obviously going to disagree.
Back to you. You realize that you articulated a belief system just now, and you said that.
Yes, there are belief systems. They're not necessarily atheistic. The things I've been describing here are not atheistic. They are atheist friendly. They're also theist friendly. They are systems of belief, but they are not all-encompassing systems of belief. And my point about multiple perspectives is just so you don't get stuck on one, because the likelihood that you get stuck on the wrong one is very high. So you have to be able to constantly test things against each other. And yes, maybe you need a belief system to test the other belief systems. But again, this is kind of what I was describing before. You can have independent beliefs that aren't necessarily connected by a system. You can even have independent belief systems that aren't connected by an all-consuming belief system. Like you can have beliefs of how you know anything at all. You can have beliefs of what is correct and incorrect. And you can have beliefs about logic and coherence, but they don't necessarily have to connect to this belief system about God or any of these other belief systems. You can filter things through each other, and that actually is how we build the ability to have intelligibility at all, is we're constantly testing our perceptions of things against each other. And it's constantly bouncing off each other and retesting it, re-examining it in the context of other things, seeing things in different situations, seeing similarities between situations, comparing them. And ultimately, that's based in experience and just observation, which is not a belief system. Memories are not a belief system, right? I believe this happened to me. I don't think you can accurately describe as a belief system. I don't think your memories are a belief system. That's a misuse of the terms. So, I hope that made sense.
And you said that this should be the one we follow. That we don't follow any one belief system, but you just gave me one.
No, I didn't say that.
Yeah, you should follow a belief system of doubting belief systems. Is that a belief system? Or is that just checking yourself before you wreck yourself?
Because I would never wish to.
Or is that just caring about truth like you said you do? If you care about truth, you have to be open to the fact that you've made mistakes. Right? Unless you think that you already have the whole truth, which means you would be God.
Say to anyone else how they should live their lives, because I don't know how they should live their lives.
So would you tell the rapist that he should stop?
Yeah, that's a good point. That is a contradiction.
See?
Yes, I would. But I suppose that's because...
Can I just say this with respect to you?
Yeah.
The only way you can get to that kind of fallacious, and I don't mean that offensively, I promise I don't, but it is fallacious. What you just did demonstrated the collapse of an unbelieving worldview. Christians can't live with that kind of tension.
It's not an unbelieving worldview to say that there's a logical contradiction in the idea that you get to rape people. That's... and you don't really need a complete worldview. I suppose a morality would be a belief system. That's fine. This girl... See, this guy has kind of tricked this girl into not wanting to commit to any particular belief system. So I think that's where she's failing right now. Let's see where this goes.
Person who doesn't articulate themselves.
No, I don't mean it. No, listen, I mean this with absolute humility too.
I mean that, like, with all the things as well. Like,
yeah,
I cannot be held up as a representative of something that I'm not.
Absolute humility. No, you have absolutely zero humility because you think, that's why you're smiling and rubbing your hands, you think you're being used as a divine tool by the perfect being who loves you personally. The creator of the entire universe and all of the cosmos is personally involved in your life. That is the farthest thing from humility I've ever seen. That you think you have the one answer which is completely empty, and yet you're judging everyone else when you have nothing. And that's humility? That's integrity. Bullshit. It's the opposite.
Oh, no. I'm talking about
I'm only one individual.
See, I think what he's attempting to do is to say, if you have a worldview at all, it must be grounded in God. He's not being very explicit about it, and she's not picking up on this, but this is what presup is. You can't have a worldview that's not contradictory unless it's grounded in God, which is just a bullshit premise pulled out of their asses from nowhere. It's not a premise they can back up. Because, first of all, here's the thing. If you're claiming that to be true, you're claiming to already have knowledge that is making you able to analyze truth claims, but then you're saying that ability to analyze truth claims is grounded in the thing you needed that ability to establish in the first place. So you're using intelligibility to get to God, to get to intelligibility. So presup is all circularity, all circles all the way down.
Whereas
Sure.
You are, I presume, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are happy to represent Christians.
Sure, I'm a Christian.
Yeah, but you're happy to represent them, whereas I don't wish to represent anything because I can't say that I speak on behalf of anyone else. And even with the people who, yes, we all agree on one thing there, but there could be no...
Yeah, I mean, she's right. She doesn't represent anyone else. She shouldn't be trying to. But this is why I'm on a crusade, is because and I don't want to represent atheists, and I don't want atheists to represent me. But I'm on a crusade to present this argument that I see atheists or non-theists, agnostics of all kinds, struggling with, is they want to say, I'm just being neutral. I'm just trying to analyze the truth claims of God. And yes, that is their responsibility to provide proof of God. But it is interesting to have the conversation and provide a moral framework for them that is superior to theirs. And I think that atheists do struggle with this because they don't know really what is grounding their morality. It's there. I think it's pretty obvious when you actually sit down and think about it. I mean, the contradictions in an ethic of rape are clear. And the definition of good in existence is clear if you just sit down and you're objective about it. And this has nothing to do with the question of God. It's friendly to atheism and theism. It's not friendly to people who need their God to be the absolute non-contingent thing. And I'm not saying I'm the atheist Jesus here. I'm just the messenger. I've just discovered these things that are already there. They're just beneath the surface. I'm just telling you, I'm just pointing them out.
In all the thousands of people in that march, there could be very few people that I actually have a second opinion that I like. Just to be really to exaggerate, that's not quite the word that I mean. Just to make a very big statement, there may not be another second thing that I agree anywhere with.
Yeah,
I think
we're getting a little far field of the original thing, but we're talking about a meaningful foundation for moral complaints, moral indignation.
Yeah, but I just disagree.
You don't have a meaningful foundation for any of that. All you have is might makes right, which is not meaningful at all. It is the opposite of meaning. Evil is nothing. It is the absence of a thing.
Agree with you.
No, I think that's, and I mean this with absolute respect to you, I think saying I just disagree with you isn't quite an answer to the challenge I presented to you in terms of what provides a meaningful foundation for ethics. Now, this is an ethical question here.
Now, if people are honestly asking you what presents a meaningful foundation for ethics, have that conversation by all means, and this is what I'm trying to bolster more than anything. But if it's going to turn into our God is true because you don't have anything to back it up with, and I'm just going to sneak in the premise that God is that thing. So there's two prongs here. They fail to provide any meaningful foundation of their God being a foundation for moral principles or truth principles. But we also need, and by we I just mean anyone, I'm not talking about just atheists, we need to be able to provide a counter to that, just in general. But if they're going to be sneaky about it, yeah, you need to push back and say you need to provide evidence for your God. You can't just provide evidence for your God by saying you can't prove God doesn't exist, therefore it's rational to believe God does exist. No, that is fallacious, so therefore purely irrational. Anyway.
Here. This is all about ethics. On the one side, we say that you ought not be able to kill a human being in the womb. And the other side says it's an injustice to not let us do it.
Okay.
It's all about morality.
Have you read into...
Yes, bodily autonomy is all about morality. And so a fully conscious human who has bodily autonomy versus a developing human who is literally just a part of that pregnant woman's body is it's not a hard question. It's a purely moral question that abortion is correct, or abortion rights are correct. You know, it's never good to destroy or to kill like that. There is such thing as creative destruction. But the thing is, it's bad to have a society that will criminalize abortions for a lot of reasons. I don't want to go into the abortion stuff, but you can certainly ground ethics in pro-choice. And they do. We all instinctually know bodily autonomy is a good thing. But we need to be able to provide a basis for why bodily autonomy is a good thing, and therefore we have to be able to define good. The Christians need to provide a basis why, you know, whatever their perspective is, what it is. They can't. I think if they're honest with themselves, they'll come to the same principles, but they're not. They don't have principles. They just have dictates. They just have, well, my pastor said it's not cool. So my pastor said it's murder. So I'm against it because I think God's against it. There's no actual reason why. They don't understand why a human life is valuable, and thus they don't understand why bodily autonomy is valuable. So unless you really go down to the roots, both sides here are floundering. They don't really have a foundation.
What the Eighth Amendment is about.
Yes. Eighth Amendment about equalizing the life of the preborn child with the mother.
Well, that's what it is. That's how it stands.
That's what it does.
Do you know
They aren't equal. Here's an experiment. I have a live kicking baby who was born 10 minutes ago, and I have a 2-week-old fetus that was removed and is now in a petri dish. I can set one on fire and the other one gets to go on and grow and become an adult. Which do you choose? They do not have the same value.
the implications of that?
That it protects human beings in the womb, yes.
Do you know the implications of that for people who are pregnant, who then are ill in similar way?
Well, I can tell you the implications for as someone who lives in the United States.
So, you really need to define terms. I really don't know what he means by human being. And if pressed, he'll say, well, it has human DNA. Yep. So do skin cells. So does cancer. So that clearly does not define a human being. You can go down the line for this, and it's, this is a time when being pedantic is actually quite necessary.
Implications of doing away with the Eighth Amendment is about 60 million babies deep after 40 years.
No, my question was, do you
They're not babies.
know what the implications are with how things are at the moment? A lot of this is focused on abortion,
Yeah.
and on having the choice of ending an unwanted pregnancy, but it also is to do with access to healthcare for women and women who have a wanted pregnancy.
What's healthcare? What do you mean?
So let's say someone has, now this is something that I hope is correct. Basically saying it may not be completely 100% correct.
Okay.
My understanding is that, and I'm pro-choice anyway, I think if someone wants to end an unwanted pregnancy for whatever reason, they should.
You keep using the term unwanted pregnancy, but it seems like that's a euphemism to me. What we're really talking about is
They do not want
right. But what's a pregnancy? What's in there?
I'm not getting into. We disagree, so I'm not getting into that.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting way to frame the argument. Is to right, but getting rid of a pregnancy is getting rid of a what?
But I'm not talking about that element of things. I'm not talking about that element of things.
A fetus, a child, doesn't matter. Doesn't have the same worth as children who are more developed and out of the womb. The reasonable place to actually have rules around is whether or not it has a brain. I think that's pretty reasonable. A brain is an absolute precondition for a person who deserves rights, which separates just some cells that have human DNA from a person. Now, I don't think merely having a brain makes you a person, because it's more complex than that, but I think it's a reasonable place to put rules around, because it's at least the minimum requirements that you need for a person.
But isn't that the main issue?
You asked me about healthcare for women.
Sure, yeah.
So what I mean by that is my understanding that if, for example, my understanding principle is still the case, that if a woman had an illness that she needed treatment for that could harm let's say it was a wanted pregnancy.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know, so let's call the thing in the belly baby.
You just said child.
Yeah. But I know that that's such a
Yep, child just means any product of reproduction. It doesn't... You can kill children. You can kill the children of bacteria. You can kill the spider eggs. So what? Doesn't mean it has the same value.
But you're having a hard time.
Yeah, because I know you'll pick on everything that I'm saying.
No, not pick on it. I want to encourage you with love to be consistent. Say child, because that's what it is. You meant it.
Because I was thinking of a wanted pregnancy, and I was thinking of my...
So wanting it makes it a child. The mere desire to want.
Just own it. Say child. Doesn't matter. A child can not be a person. Here's the other thing that pisses me off about the abortion debate. They say, it's a life. Just admit you're taking a life. Yep, just admit it. It's okay to kill things. Again, you're allowed to kill bacteria, you're allowed to kill spiders, cockroaches, and you're allowed to kill fetuses. You're allowed to kill cancer. You're allowed to kill a lot of things. Because they're not persons. Persons have rights.
It would be what I would call it again. If one speaking half
So if a mother kills her 3-year-old, and she says, I didn't want it?
That's a false equivalency. That's not what I said.
Yeah, because a 3-year-old's a person.
But my point is, access to healthcare, you asked about that. If a person who is pregnant needs treatment, and that may harm the pregnancy, that may prematurely end the pregnancy, then you may not have...
Pregnancy is a state. You can't harm a pregnancy. You can harm...
Prematurely end the pregnancy, then. You can prematurely end the pregnancy.
Sure.
So if the treatment that person was to get would prematurely end the pregnancy, then that treatment may not be available to the person. So that's a lot of what this is about, the focus and the media coverage. And to be honest...
Well, it looks like this has just become an abortion debate. I'll finish it out, though, because I always watch the whole video.
A lot of the sides are focusing on access to abortion and having choice. That's one element of it.
To kill your child at will, though, is the...
But another element of it is access to health.
But isn't the real foundational thing here? Because I'll tell you, the signs I saw was keep your laws out of my vagina, stay out of my box, keep your theology out of my biology, my body, my choice. It sounds like yours.
Yeah, keep your theology out. Because someone else might have a different theology. Let's go back for a sec.
Saying my box, keep your theology out of my biology, my body, my...
Yep. Keep your theology out of the laws. Because guess what? I can just come up with a different theology where my God says abortion's fine. So, if God is the arbiter of morality, then abortion is fine. See, and then you might sit there and say, well, that's clearly a false God because abortion is wrong. Now you've admitted my entire premise. That moral principles are separate from the dictates of a God. You can tell whether a God is right or not because of principles, because a God is contingent on principles, not the other way around.
My choice. It sounds like you're saying that it's about if a woman's life is in danger, health-wise, in terms of she has cancer or she can't give birth to the child. But that's not what they're debating about.
That's literally what I just said. I said a lot of that focus is on access to abortion.
But if they were of equal value, how could you pick the mother over the child, even if her life is more in danger? Why would that matter if they're both equal? How come now a child is less valuable than the mother with cancer? Huh.
Which again, I am.
How do you feel about that?
Oh, I'm completely for that.
So if a woman is 20 weeks pregnant, you think she should just be able to kill her child?
But there are also other elements to it as well. So it's not just that.
So when is it okay to murder a child?
I'm not answering these features.
Murder is a legal term. Stop equivocating. Stop using loaded language. That's all apologists can do. Okay. Well, I think we've covered just about enough today. I think I've said everything that needs to be said. And God bless.